Over the last few years, the weaponization of the government and the courts to intimidate and silence opponents has become unnerving. It smells of a banana republic, and it puts our republic on slippery footing. The politically motivated prosecution of former President Donald Trump could be the straw that breaks the camel's back for many. But it is not by any means the only example. We have parents being targeted by the Department of Justice for speaking out against leftist indoctrination in public schools funded with their tax dollars. We have the FBI monitoring Catholic churches, doing so undercover. We have military-style raids of homes of nonviolent pro-life protesters. We have the federal government colluding with banking institutions to surveil the private financial data of citizens and organizations like, yes, the Family Research Council, and the list goes on. Now, this weekend, I was talking to the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, about the calls from some conservatives to fight fire with fire. If the left is lawless, we must do the same to counter them. Of course, he and I both disagree. To do so would be to ensure the demise of our republic. So how should we, as Christians, as followers of Christ, respond? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Dr. Albert Mohler, president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. He's the author of many books, including Tell Me the Stories of Jesus, the Explosive Power of Jesus' Parables. Dr. Mohler, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you on the program.
Thank you, Tony. Always good to be with you.
Now, you've said that the prosecution of former President Trump was blatantly political and timed to inflict maximum political damage, just as the 2024 presidential campaign was hitting high gear. So how do we respond with that knowledge and understanding?
Well, I think it is just important for us to put this into context. We're here talking about events that, in terms of the court's interest, were dated back to 2016. This is 2024. And we're talking about a case that was described by the previous district attorney as a zombie case. And we're talking about a current district attorney who ran for office vowing to do whatever he could do to bring action against Donald Trump. And then we have this case that was brought. And even on the left, they admit this was a novel legal theory. In other words, no one's ever been prosecuted on these grounds before. And then you have the media talking about this case as a hush money case. And frankly, there are huge moral issues you and I would agree with that are involved there. But that's not what the case is about when it comes to the law. When it comes to the law, I don't think the average American could even explain what it is that this court has now convicted Donald Trump of doing. And that's why I think this is as you say, it's a constitutional crisis for the United States. And I think we as Christians have to think through these issues and understand we have an absolute interest in and commitment to the rule of law. That means we call it out when it fails.
Right. And I think, in part, their hope was based upon the underlying issue here that you said really has nothing to do with the application of the law in this case, the hush money that was paid for an improper relationship, which we would completely call out and have.
Yes.
This was before he was president. We're now into the 2024 election cycle, and this clearly was designed, I think, from the start to suppress voters because all this stuff is dredged up. But beyond that, beyond putting aside the president, the election of 2024, we're talking about the rule of law. This is how our republic works. And some Christians might see this and say, and conservatives are saying this. I mean, I'm hearing it. Eye for eye, a tooth for a tooth. If they're going to be lawless, we've got to be lawless. That is exactly what those who hate this country would want, because that would tear it down.
No, absolutely. Your point's emphatically true. And we need to say it again. Our job is to do what's right and to uphold what is righteous and just. And, one of the things that's going on here, this lawfare, is going to be very tempting. There never has been a situation in which you've had a former president of the United States brought up on state criminal charges in a novel prosecutorial theory. I can't think of many things that are actually more dangerous for our republic, but the one thing that would add danger is conservatives gaining control and trying to do the same thing.
Right.
This is, it's the destruction of the rule of law. We have to be the people who uphold the rule of law.
And it's going to be a fight. We happen to be in our reading through the Bible, reading through David, in Saul. In fact, I was just reading this morning, reminded of 1 Samuel chapter 24, where David is in a cave and his men, and Saul comes in, and Saul is pursuing David to kill him unjustly, and his men encourage him, "Oh, the Lord has delivered him into your hand, and you go ahead and kill him, and we'll take care of the problem." And David says, "No," he said, I cannot raise my hand against God's anointed, because it would be violating the law of God. And David had to trust God. Now, it took time. It took 15 years to see justice prevail, but it took time, and he had a kingdom then to inherit as king. I'm very concerned if we say, look, we got to do what they're doing. We will, in fact, see the end of our republic in our lifetime.
Well, I think in even shorter than that, Tony, to make your point. So if you think about this, how many United States presidents, say in the last 30 years, have been investigated by special counsel? And the various laws even creating these special counsel have often turned out to be unworkable. So we're like on our third theory of the case right now.
Right.
And this lawfare is going to be destructive of every administration. And so it's just going to be a matter of ruthless power. Whoever gets elected tries to put the previous president in prison. That's ridiculous.
Which is like a third world country.
Exactly.
And do not think that we can continue. And I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking, in general. Do not think that we can continue enjoying the prosperity and the peace that we've had as a country because business stops, the economy tanks. We begin to experience all of these other issues when we do not have the framework that gives people confidence that justice will prevail in the end.
And we're living in a strange political time. We need to admit that. And quite honestly, we're dealing like on both sides of the political divide right now with unprecedented developments. The last thing we need right now is to give ourselves to a pattern of revenge by lawfare. And I can only hope that the former president, having experienced this, is going to understand the danger of this kind of thing now set loose, and not do it.
So, Dr. Mohler, I think we've analyzed the challenge, the risk before us. Let's talk about the way forward as believers, and put everybody else aside, because I do believe as followers of Christ, we're to bring solutions to the table. I believe we're the ones that have clear vision, and we can help move the nation forward. So let me throw the first one out there that I think we need to start with is we need to be praying for that insight and that understanding to see what is happening here.
That's absolutely right, because we're not just looking at a presidential election as if you could say that. We're looking at tectonic shifts in the entire culture and, frankly, on the global picture. And so I think Christians need to be very prayerful, as you say, and very concerned about discerning how the Lord would have us to act as Christians, as American citizens, and as those who, I speak as a grandfather, have grave concerns about the society that successive generations will inherit.
This is not a time to back up or to go into a cave and hide. I think this is a time where, with great clarity, not with anxiety, because the Scripture makes very clear we're not to be anxious about anything, but with prayer and supplication and thanksgiving, let our requests be made known unto God. And then I believe take our action, which will be level-headed, clear in focus. And that means we need to be involved. We need to be educated, informed, but voting and supporting candidates, becoming candidates. I mean, this is a time all hands on deck.
Well, you're exactly right. All hands on deck. And frankly, all hands better be pretty well informed. They better be learning what the issues are and better be learning how the political process works. And so if we leave this to the people who want to create mayhem and want to morally transform this nation, then quite frankly, the cause is lost. There will not be an American republic in the next generation. And so we desperately need Christians to be informed, to be active. And frankly, even though we're disgusted by many of the things that are going on, there's no excuse to just withdraw from the political process. It's a mess. The answer to that is not to withdraw, but to help clean it up.
Right. So what's the role of pastors?
Yeah. I think pastors have to, first of all, just preach the word in season and out of season, and help Christians to understand how that applies to the very real challenges we face. And I'll tell you right now, Tony, I think you'll agree on this. I think there are many pastors who are going to be judged because their church members don't have a clue how to think about the challenge of the transgender revolution and what's going on in terms of the assault on parental rights and the subversion of the family. I think there are many pastors whose silence on these issues is frankly a form of ministerial malpractice. The pastor's job is not to get up and hoist a partisan flag, but the pastor's job is to preach the word and to equip the people of God for faithfulness.
100% agree. We don't need to take a political perspective. We just need to preach the truth. What's happened, though, every spiritual and moral issue has become a political issue in our day, and it's being done, I think, intentionally so that pastors, Christians will back off saying, well, those are political issues. They are moral and spiritual issues.
Absolutely. And, you make that point. Let's just make it emphatically. Putting your kid on a school bus is a political controversy, and frankly needs to be, thinking about the issues that are at stake. Going to the grocery store is a political issue these days, but you know what? You got to eat. And so, in other words, yes, we're in an age of raw-boned, white-knuckle political conflict, and there's just no way out of it. I think one of the things that we need to say is that there's no escape from this. There's no safe place. There's no non-political, escape into which you can go and say, I'm above this. No, we're in this. And we have a responsibility. We're citizens of a heavenly kingdom, yes, but we've been left for God's purposes in an earthly kingdom. We're to make a difference here as well.
Well, let's talk about those purposes, Dr. Mohler. That purpose is to make God known, to bring honor and glory to the Father. And in a time of great social and cultural upheaval, where people are looking for something to tether themselves to that is stable, we have the answer.
Absolutely. And that the preaching of the gospel gives us not only the hope and the assurance of everlasting life and the forgiveness of sins, it also gives us the right temporal understanding for why we're left in this world right now and what our responsibility is. You and I and other believers, we're not trying to get everything we have to get out of life from this life. That's why we are promised all things to God's glory in the life to come. But you know what? In this life, we're left here for a stewardship and for a purpose. And, everything we can pluck from disaster, every family we can keep from breaking up, every moral trend going downward that we can help to stop, that's a good thing for the glory of God. And so the gospel is the power of salvation, but it also creates gospel people who are supposed to make a difference in the world.
Right. And Jesus, as he was talking to his disciples there toward the end, warning them of the things that were coming, he said, you know what, I've told you all of these things so that you won't lose your peace and you won't lose your hope. And so even in the midst of what I would argue some challenging times that are going to probably become more challenging, we can enter into this time with confidence, with peace, and even joy. Jesus spoke about that.
That's right.
That our joy would be preserved because our eyes are focused on him, and our focus is also on the mission that he's given to us.
Yeah, that's such an important point, Tony. I think many of us who contend for the family, we better make really clear that we find such great joy in our families. Those of us who contend for marriage as a union of a man and a woman, better make clear we find such joy in God's plan for marriage. And even in the political battles to which we're called, we're the people who are not to lose our joy because it's Christ's command that we not lose our joy. And I remember sometimes that when I'm dealing with some of these things, I need to tell my face that I need to reflect Christian joy. And that's a good thing for us to think about from time to time.
It is.
Not just getting angry, but being fully active and doing so in the joy of Christ.
Well, I like the way you put it, that the Lord commanded us to be joyful. And so I'm going to take that command and work on that one. Dr. Albert Mohler, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Stay in the battle, Tony. Thank you.
All right.